Welcome back to the Growing Band Director Podcast. Today we're going to cover how to program a metronome Dr. Beat for a field show. What we're going to cover is how to make a count sheet from the music that you have, how to put that count sheet into a spreadsheet, and be sure to update when changes are made. Next, we're going to manually program the Dr. Beat. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then finally, we're going to talk about the materials you need to project Dr. Beat behind your students. What we're basically trying to do is figure out how many counts we have for each section of music. If the whole song is one tempo, then it's going to be easy for you. If it has multiple tempos, then you just have to use different programs for each one. And I'll show you what that means. That's going to be pretty easy. But basically what we're doing is counting the number of beats for each tempo. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we have 3 songs only. What we're going to do is make a small little sheet here. We're going to have our loop number, and then we're going to have the tempo for that loop, and we're going to have the number of counts for that loop. Optional, if you want to include set numbers for that moment, as well as measure numbers. That's stuff I do, but you don't necessarily need to do that to get started. I'm going to kind of ignore that stuff for today. So we'll call this loop 1. Our first song is going to be 10 measures long. It's a really short song, and it's going to be in 4/4 time. So let's see, the tempo of this song is 120. Again, this is a fictional song here. And if it's 10 measures long and 4/4 time, then we're going to have 40 total counts. Now I want to keep in mind for each one of these songs that we want to count in the band. So for me, I use an 8-beat count in. If you use 4 at a slower tempo, that's fine too. So I'm going to include that count off in this first loop, which gives me actually a 48 for my first loop. And that's going to be my whole first song. Between the 2 songs, then the first and second song, I actually program the amount of time I want in there as well. So for my second loop, I'm just going to call this at 100 beats a minute. I want 8 counts. And that's basically 8 counts of silence for the audience to applaud before we count off for the next tune. There's some flexibility in this, but that's a good place to start. For our second song, let's see, it's only 10 measures long. Look at that. And then this one is also in 4/4 time, but the tempo of this one is going to be 90 beats a minute. And so again, we're going to have our count off as well. For me, when it's 90 beats a minute, I'm only going to count off 1 measure instead of 2. So my 40 counts over here, I'm going to add 4 to that. So in this case, it's going to be a 44 count set. For this next loop, again, I'm going to basically copy loop 2. So quarter note equals 100, 8 counts. Song 3, you guessed it, it's only going to be 10 measures long, but this time we're in 3/4 time, and the tempo is going to be 140 beats a minute. So this is all stuff you can figure out just by sitting and looking down at your scores. 3 beats times 10 measures, that's 30. I always count off in 4/4 no matter what. It's just a matter of giving the tempo. So I'm going to add this 30, and then I'm going to add my 8-beat count in again because it's a faster tempo. So I'm going to have 38 counts total for this one. So those are my 3 songs and the 2 breaks in between. The last thing I'm going to do here is actually create a 6th one, which is going to be the end. Because what happens is when you finish, all of a sudden your metronome just goes on to another random thing, and you don't want that distracting your band. Well, I choose a slow tempo. I don't know, something doesn't really matter. And I make it a bunch of counts, like at least 30 counts. And I'm going to make it basically silence so that when it finishes, you hear silence. You don't hear the counting in of your. The next thing you're going to want to do is then put this into some sort of sheet like this. This is a different one that we're using for a show right now, but you'll notice that this is just set up so you don't have to keep that piece of paper. And then when you're in the middle of a rehearsal and you notice this tempo of 156 is actually going to change to 160, you go in and change it here before you put it in the metronome. That way you know that when you have to reprogram it, you're going to be all set. You have to do it after each time the batteries run out. But again, once you learn how to do it, it goes pretty fast. Okay, so then you're going to take this information that you have here, and we're going to put it in, use that information to put into our Dr. Beat. I'll turn this on, and the buttons we're going to use are going to be power, the right, and the memory button, which are right here. We're going to use the knob, and then we're going to use these bottom 4 left buttons: tempo, beat pattern, voice, and loop for each one. Here's a sequence of how we're going to do this. We're going to take our first loop, which is going to be 120 beats a minute. So when I press memory, see how it blinks up top with the memory? So that is my first loop. Loop's another name for memory. So if I turn this, I change it. I don't want to. I want to stay right on this. So I press it again and I'm on it. So I'm going to press tempo, and then I want 120 beats a minute. And then for my loop, I want 48 counts. For my beat pattern on the bottom left, I always want this on 1. For my voice, I always want it on 2. You can experiment with other stuff, but that's what works for me. And then once I've done all 4 of those buttons, I go back to tempo and make sure my quarter note and my accent are all the way up and my volume's up. The one on the left and the one on the right. Once I've done it, I need to save it. And the way I save it is by pressing right twice. Notice it blinks and it's done. So then I'm going to press memory and move on to the next one. So now you see up here, we've done this one already. Now I'm going to move down and do this break right here. So I'm going to press memory again so it stops blinking, and I'm on tempo. I still, for me, anything 100 beats or less, I put on the 8th note just to make it easier for my students. So I'm going to put on the 8th note. My tempo is 100. You'll get pretty fast at this as you go. And then the loop is going to be 8. Pretty short. Again, my beat is 2 and my voice is 1. Great. Go back to tempo. Right twice, so I'm saving. Great. That one's done. Now I'm on to song number 2. So I'm going to press memory. I'm going to press it twice, so I'm on it. Okay. Then I'm going to press tempo. And my tempo is 90 beats a minute. My loop is 44 counts. And then these are already set for me. Again, 1 and 2 is what I use. When I go back to tempo, because I'm at 90 beats a minute, 100 or under, I'm going to put this 8th note on. Notice it's on, but you're not seeing it. All I'm going to do is put it down and do it again. There you go. Again, volume button is on. These are all down. Now I'm going to press right twice. That just shows that I've saved it. Okay, memory 4, you're going to get pretty quick as this as you go. If you want to fast forward to when I finish, see how it works, feel free to do that. This is, so tempo is going to be 100. Okay, I'm going to keep that 8th note on. My 1 for my beat pattern, it's basically 1 beat per measure. Voice is 2, that's the voice I like. And then I want 8 counts again like I had earlier. Once you put in the time to do this, it will save you a ton of time and your band is going to be so much better. Right twice. I'm pressing memory, moving on to number 5. The tempo is going to be 140 beats per minute. I do not want that 8th note on because it's faster. My loop is going to be 38. It's a pretty short show, but you're going to get a chance to see it. That's why I made it short. And then again, style. I like 1 beat per measure. Easier to hear on the parking lot. And 2, we did the loop already. Great. And remember to press right twice. So you save it and you'll see it blink and then be done. Memory, I'm going to go to number 6 just so I can get my silence at the end. So I'm going to set it at a low tempo. It honestly doesn't matter what tempo it is. I just like to make sure it gives me enough time, get to it and shut it off. All this stuff doesn't really matter. The loop, I want to have, should be over 30, right? So it doesn't really matter. I'll put it there. Back to tempo, save it. Okay, so you're done. So now what we're going to do is go through and you're going to hear how it works. At any point, if you press memory, you can go back to any of these and use them. Or once you're on one, you can use it all day long and change things. It won't save it unless you do that right again. So your program is still in there. So if I go to memory 1, and then I'm going to press loop. What I'm going to do is we're going to do our entire show right now. So check this out. You'll see this is going to count to 48. And as soon as it does, our song's over and it's going to go to our break in between for audience applause. Here's the end of our song coming up. Again, this is worth the effort for your band. There's some audience applause. Now you have the count off to the next song. Okay, so now we're in the middle of this 3rd song. Again, if you feel like this is too fast up here for the 2nd loop, or you want it to be more counts, you can always change any of this. This is just to give you some break time in the middle. And so your kids are prepared for between pieces, which frequently bands forget to do. So the 2nd piece is going to be finishing. And then you'll see the break, applause, count off the next tune. And then it's going to go through your song. Again, you've done all this figuring out. And you'll notice when it gets to 38, it's going to be silent afterward, which means it's done and not distracting. Here it is. Oh, I screwed that up, didn't I? Let me show you why I screwed it up. I need to get all of these down and off, and I forgot to do that. So once those are off, now I need to press right again. And you'll find, so we're going to listen to the 5th section again, just so you can see what happens when you do it right at the very end. And then all of a sudden, it just stops and is not a distraction. It's free for applause from your audience or whatever it is you're doing at practice. At that point, last thing you need to do is make sure you have the materials to project it behind the band. If you've already done that, then your work is done. But this investment is usually about $1,500 or so, which people at first sometimes think is a lot. But once you get it, you can use it for probably up to 10 years or so with minimal upgrading. It completely changes your band. So first thing you'll need is this Anchor Audio, basically a speaker. And there's lots of different things. If you call the people at Anchor or Sweetwater, they can help you with exactly what you need. I'm just giving you like the easiest way to get this together. I don't use the speakers, the microphone through that. I use a separate thing if we use a microphone, but you can get packages of these that have microphones in them as well. You also need the body pack, which is right here. And these links are going to be in the description below, as well as on this document if you're a member. And this basically just goes, there's something you hold, and this hooks into the metronome by using just a simple cord. Okay. Again, you get the transmitter. If you look at the top of this, it has that 1/8 inch. So it can be 1/8 to H if you want to use that, or it can be 1/8 to quarter, whichever one, because the Dr Beat actually has both on the side of it. So hopefully this helped you guys out. Please feel free to send me a note. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.